The old trolley that took the crowds to Mount Adams closed over a century ago, though the remnant stone that held the wooden planks of the trolley cars still remain embedded in the hillside. Now those who come use hybrids driving over uprooted bricks barely covering the torn blacktop. However, the police quarantined the rustic village hilltop when the celebration began. No one could enter or leave Mount Adams without a city-approved shuttle. The crowds began to gather just after noon as clouds covered the earth like an upside-down Tupperware bowl. The air was thin but humid enough to remind us that it wasn't a perfect day. It was then that the bars began to open after the waitresses puffed their bras with Kleenexes and the glasses chilled to reasonably cool temperatures. The crowds were always a mixed breed, older men wearing khakis and Calvin Klein button-down shirts and younger in blue jeans with tattered modern retro tees. But the object was always the same: to forget why they came, and to forget why they came, and to forget what they'll do. At first, the crowds arrived in order, slightly inebriated from their abodes. Young men having to say how much their new job sucked, housewives admitting that admired the architecture as they properly sipped Long Island's. Husbands talked about baseball, knowing they'd do better. It's a damn shame because we used to have a ball team, they'd say. But as the dusk drew near and the babysitters retrieved parental responsibilities, the buses became standing room only, and it was now acceptable to overconsume in the quote finer things of life. The business district was alive on St. Gregory Street. Crowds meandered into the streets, cheering and screaming for the same sake as drinking. I watched as they walked from Longworth's to a Live One, to the wine cellar, to a Blind Lemon, having specials on the double, watching B movies buzz as the Eagles and Queen battled for supremacy. Patrons began spilling over one another, laughing at jokes they already knew, nodding too strongly at bumper sticker theology, carrying their emotions on their sleeves and remorse in their eyes, lamenting to strangers for no particular reason. Fireworks rang in the distance as women screamed wrong lyrics to 80s pop. One man, staggering in a dizzy disarray, found a stool to keep the room from spinning. My friend, jolly when with acquaintances but disturbed when alone, finished his violent rant about his father, how he would never love him after the abuse and cheating he did on his mother. I listened with intent, or as much intent as I could muster. It was an old story, as our friendship consisted of such evenings. I did so out of humor or humility, either one. I was the brick wall he needed, though a psychologist would be better suited. I was in Longworth's watching the crowd continue the annual celebration of overconsumption on the holiday designed specifically for that function. Longworth's had a great deal of history. One couldn't tell at that time, since the smoke obscured the clear viewing of the ceiling's symmetric tiles, and the wood walls were now glowing with neon signs. The lights from the full moon should have amplified its beauty, but it was blocked by posters for $2 Millers and a cold shadow from an old church. Its dormitories were converted into apartments for upper-class financial analysts, and the sanctuary was now a nightclub. A fight broke out between two men as I left Longworth's before the stitches were needed. Leaving was easy. It was easy. I just telling my friend I'd call him tomorrow after he had a chance to, quote, get his thoughts together, which was a polite beg for his censorship. He said it wasn't a problem as he laid his head on the cold, sticky table just to rest his eyes until the issues disappeared. I paid for his tab out of pity, patting him on the back, telling him I'd see him at work. He'd wake up the next day in bed with no idea who changed his clothes. It wasn't me. The indulgence was now blatant, no longer condensed to a single bar. People laid on the red bricks of St. Gregory Street, celebrating as one woman stumbled shirtless, wondering who stole her top, not concerned for those watching her. She found her tattered coverings in a fountain of a monk drinking, water flowing from his glass in one hand, grapes held in the other. By now, I only wanted to get to my apartment and go to bed, though this required wandering through the filth-filled streets, walking over uprooted cobblestones from old trees that long outlived their purpose of raising the property value of the owner's shops. Red zapping flashing lights beamed from the EMS from Longworth. Women passed on the left, stinking of cigarettes, elastic tops hugging their potbellies. They knew what they wanted. I didn't indulge them. It was then